Good evening. Welcome everyone to lesson number 2 of Outsmarting Anti-Semitism. See, hopefully this will cooperate. All right, no apologies. I want to begin making 3 points about anti-Semitism. Point number 1 is that anti-Semitism is ancient. There are some people who might think that when did anti-Semitism really begin? Perhaps with the advent of Christianity, the accusation that the Jewish people committed deicide. However, we're going to display that anti-Semitism predates Christianity by a long shot. Number 2, the ideas and the concepts of anti-Semitism are absurd, they're crazy, they're nuts, they're not logical, they're quite irrational. And point number 3, very often anti-Semitism is absolutely contradictory. The points, the arguments completely contradict themselves from all sides. So we're going to begin with a text from a pretty famous Roman historian. His name was Tacitus. He lived in the 1st century, and he writes this on text number 1, page 48. Alan, would you like to read the first text on page 48? And just unmute yourself. And again, no pressure to read if you don't want to.
Once during a plague in Egypt, which caused bodily disfigurement, King Bacchorus approached the oracle of Ammon and asked for a remedy, whereupon he was told to purge his kingdom and to transport this race into other lands, since it was hateful to the gods. So the Hebrews were searched out and gathered together. Then, being abandoned in the desert, while all others lay idle and weeping, one only for the exiles, Moses by name, warned them not to hope for help from gods or men, for they were deserted by both, but to trust to themselves. The Jews regard as profane all that we hold sacred. On the other hand, they permit all that we abhor. They first chose to rest on the 7th day, but after a time they were led by the charms of indolence to give over the 7th year as well to inactivity. The other customs of the Jews are base and abominable, and owe their persistence to their depravity. For the worst rascals among other peoples, renouncing their ancestral religions, always kept sending tribute and contributions to Jerusalem, thereby increasing the wealth of the Jews. Again, the Jews are extremely loyal toward one another and always ready to show compassion, but toward every other people, they feel only hate and enmity.
So this is a text which predates Christianity, and you could see in this text a lot of the classic anti-Semitic tropes, and we're going to dissect some of them in just a minute. But one of the things that really stuck out in this text is that Tacitus is giving an alternative version of history, of the story of the Exodus from Egypt. He's actually quoting an Egyptian historian from hundreds of years earlier who have this very, very different version of the Exodus from Egypt that we have. So just an interesting point there in text number 1. The next text that we're going to look at is from a Jewish historian. His name was Josephus. Very interesting history and background to him. And what he was trying to write was actually a defense of Judaism. He wanted to defend Judaism against the writings of Apion. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that properly, but his name was Apion. He was a Hellenized Egyptian philosopher, quite anti-Semitic, so he was going to defend the Jewish people. He begins the defense in text number 2. We're not going to read the entire text, by quoting a historian who got his information from Antiochus, right? Who is Antiochus? He was a wicked king. He did to the Jews a terrible thing, if you know the song. He is from the story of Hanukkah. And what do they write? The Jewish people worshipped a golden head of a donkey that was placed in the Beis HaMikdash. Now, if you know anything about the Jewish people, that is probably not an accurate depiction of a synagogue worship of the Jewish people. But he continues his defense, and we're going to move all the way to about halfway through the long paragraph, right? The last two words on the line, I'm going to read it just because it might be too hard to find it, but the last two words on the line begin with the words, the practice. So this is what Josephus writes, again, quoting Apion, this Hellenized Egyptian philosopher. He says, the practice was repeated annually at a fixed season. They would kidnap a Greek foreigner, fatten him up for a year, and then lead him to a certain wood where they slew him, sacrificed his body with their customary ritual, partook of his flesh, and while immolating the Greek, swore an oath of enmity to the Greeks. The remains of their victim were then thrown into a pit. The man stated that he had now but a few days left to live and implored the king out of respect for the gods of Greece to defeat this Jewish plot upon his lifeblood and to deliver him from his miserable predicament. Fools must be refuted, not by arguments, but by facts. Here then we have rank impiety at its worst and a gratuitous lie designed to mislead persons who do not trouble to investigate the facts. So Josephus is quoting this historian who is saying that the Jews regularly, routinely capture, kidnap, and torture Greeks, sacrifice them, practice cannibalism, the worst possible things you can imagine. And Josephus says this is ridiculous, this is a lie. We must defend ourselves, we have to defend ourselves with the facts. Now let's explore these two texts and look at the various classical signs of anti-Semitism. One, we see that the societal problems are being blamed on the Jews. The first text from Tacitus, this was about a plague. The nation was affected by a plague. Who do you blame? You blame the Jewish people. Today, the year 2021, there's a pandemic. COVID is going around. There are anti-Semites who are blaming the pandemic, who are blaming COVID-19 on the Jewish people. So this is a classic anti-Semitic trope. Any societal problem, blame it on the Jews. Next, we have the claim that the Jewish people are lazy. We don't work on Shabbos, right? There's an idea of a Shemitah year, right? Jewish people are characterized as being lazy. Rejected by gods, right? So this is a religious argument that the Jewish people are rejected by all the various pagan gods of the day. If they're rejected by the pagan gods of the day, therefore we can persecute them, harass them, murder them, right? All anti-Semitism is going to be justified. The Jewish people are considered to be not just people who oppose their values, but he actually writes, Judaism opposes every one of our values, right? The Jewish people represent the opposite of everything that we hold to be normal, everything that we hold to be dear. Therefore, the Jews have absolutely no place in our society because their values are completely and totally the opposite of what the non-Jewish world would consider. He writes about the Jewish people being wealthy. Again, classic anti-Semitic trope that Jews are obsessed with money, they're obsessed with gold, right? Ripping off non-Jewish people, right? Criminal activities, taking their money, sending it to Jerusalem. That the Jewish people hate non-Jews. The Jewish people have cruel rituals, right? Ritual killing, blood libels. So all the way going back more than 2,000 years, all of the classic anti-Semitic tropes that the Jewish people had to deal with 100 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, and even more than that, were present and were in full force among the anti-Semites. Looking at any of the claims, they're ridiculous, they're absurd, they don't make any sense. However, it has not stopped anti-Semites in history, not just believing in them, but using these absurd anti-Semitic stereotypes to actually justify the torment, the torture, the abuse, and ultimately the mass murder of the Jewish people. And many of these ideas are actually still believed today. 9/11 takes place, right? The Twin Towers are taken down, the Pentagon is hit, another plane goes down, I believe in Pennsylvania. Al-Qaeda actually formally takes responsibility, right? They acknowledge, they admit, they confess, It was us, and they do so proudly. Yet, what do we see? Jews did 9/11, right? Google dancing Israelis. I didn't do it. I wouldn't recommend Google dancing Israelis. Terrorist government of Israel cannot be ruled out as a suspect. All kinds of interesting media outlets are suggesting that Israel was behind 9/11. The Mossad was behind 9/11. And the Mossad contacted 4,000 Jews who work in the World Trade Center to warn them, to let them know about the attack that was about to happen. Absurd, crazy, totally nuts. Not only that, 18% of the people who died on 9/11, right? Almost 20% were Jewish. Yet somehow this conspiracy is alive and well today on the internet. So these anti-Semitic ideas are nuts, they're crazy, they're absurd, but they're not just ridiculous, they are very often contradictory. Let's go to text number 4. This is a quotation from Rabbi Menachem Zemba. Rabbi Menachem Zemba was one of the leading sages, the leading rabbis in Poland before the Holocaust. He unfortunately was killed by the Nazis in the Warsaw Ghetto. He actually was known as the rabbi of the Warsaw Ghetto. And this is one of the things that he wrote. Text number 4, Karen, would you like to read text number 4, please, on page 54?
Sure. There are those who seek to identify legitimate causes for the hatred of Jews. However, reality has shown that there is no legitimate reason. Anti-Semitism has no justifiable cause. The haters simply choose to hate God's people. This is demonstrated by the fact that Jews are hated for being capitalist and also for being socialist. They are hated because they are overly ambitious and sharp-minded, and also because they are indolent and parasitic. They are hated because they are too religious and conservative, and also because they advance progressive and secular ideas. The reasons for this hatred are consistently contradictory and have not an ounce of logic behind them.
So look at the contradictions. Jews are evil because they're socialists, but Jews are also evil because they're capitalists. Jews are evil because they're ambitious. They want to take over everything. Also, those darn Jews are lazy. They do nothing. The Jewish people are crazy because of their religion. The Jewish people are crazy because they are promoting secular values. Right? You have all of these type of contradictions. The bottom line is, in whatever era the Jewish people lived, whatever the issue of the day was, whatever the hot button issue was, the Jewish people were on the other side, right? That was the way to sideline, to criticize, to make the Jewish people the other. Whatever the issue is, the Jewish people are on the opposite, completely and totally contradictory. This is something very much we see today. Human rights, right, and rightfully so, is at the forefront of the consciousness of people around the world. So therefore, if human rights is at the forefront of people's minds, so therefore Israel and the Jewish people, by extension, have to be considered to be the worst violators of human rights. Now, I don't want to get into that today because the topic of Israel and anti-Semitism we're going to be discussing next week. But we see the contradiction being that whatever is the hot button issue, Jews are on the opposite side of that issue. The absurdity of all these claims leads to two very important conclusions. Conclusion number one, if the claims that people are making about the Jewish people are absurd, we are obligated to refute those claims. If we can successfully refute the claims of anti-Semites, the problem should be solved. It should be all taken care of, and that will be the end of anti-Semitism. This is what Josephus wrote. This is what he tried to do. The challenge, however, is that it doesn't really work. Right? It does not work very well at all. We've tried it for the past 2,000 years. It has not gotten rid of anti-Semitism. Right? I experienced this firsthand at Evergreen State College, one of the most anti-Semitic environments that you can be in. Every attempt to bring, whether it was pro-Israel speakers, they were not interested, they were ignored, there was no debate, there was no conversation, nobody was showing up. They simply did not care about facts. They did not care about explanations. They did not care about any other opinion. Because the way that anti-Semites operate, they are just going to keep on believing. Hardcore haters will not allow themselves to be confused with the facts. Text number 5. Mark, would you like to read text number 5 on page 56?
Text number
Text
5.
number
was it?
5 on page 56.
Okay, it is hard, if not impossible, to explain something that is essentially irrational, delusional, and absurd. That is the nature of all conspiracy theories, of which anti-Semitism is just one. Think about it. Why do some people insist that the moon landings took place on a stage set someplace in the American West? Despite the existence of reams of scientific and personal evidence to the contrary, they believe this because they subscribe to the notion that the government and other powerful entities are engaged in vast conspiracies to fool the public. If we were to provide these conspiracy theorists with evidence that proves the landing was indeed on the moon, they would a priori dismiss what we say and assume we are part of the conspiracy. To try to defeat an irrational supposition, especially when it is firmly held by its proponents, with a rational explanation is virtually impossible. Any information that does not correspond with the conspiracy theorist's preferred social, political, or ethnic narratives is ipso facto false. Social scientists have described such theories as having a self-sealing quality that makes them particularly immune to challenge.
This doesn't mean that we shouldn't try, right? There's definitely value in trying to respond to anti-Semitic ideas, present the truth, present the facts, and certainly it will impact some people. But unfortunately, as a rule, it simply doesn't work, right? It's not an actual solution to taking care of the problem, getting rid of the problem of anti-Semitism. The second important point that has to be brought up from the fact that all these anti-Semitic ideas are so crazy and absurd is the actual term anti-Semitism, what it means, where it comes from, and whether we should be using it or not. The title anti-Semitism, which is the technical term that we use for Jew hatred in the world, it was created by a German political writer named Wilhelm Marr in the year 1879. Where did it come from? What was his goal? He wanted to make Jew hatred appear to be sophisticated. He wanted to make it sound legitimate, rational. He wanted to make it sound scientific. From his perspective, he wanted Jew hatred to be an acceptable political philosophy. There's all kinds of different political approaches. There are people who are anti-monarchists. There are people who are anti all kinds of different things, and they base their political philosophy on it. So he came up with this term, anti-Semitism. The purpose of it, the goal of it, was to make hating Jews sound legitimate, respectable, and so on. We have to know that what is anti-Semitism? It's evil, right? It's evil. That is what anti-Semitism is. It's evil. It's not a perspective. It's not a particular political ideology. Yes, Karen.
What was it called before he came up with this term?
I don't know if there was an official name, such a technical name. But when this particular name, when it was used, that's when it started in 1879. That's when the term became out there. And when people say anti-Semitism, it almost has like it's not so bad, right? It's not a compliment to say anti-Semitic, but it doesn't have this, it's not a word that on the surface of it, right, invokes a emotion. It's a very technical term. It's like a scientific term. It doesn't evoke the emotion that it should. But the reality is that it is evil. This is also something that I experienced on campus firsthand and that we have to be aware of. When it comes to anti-Israel groups, Hamas, right, and Hezbollah, groups of that nature, they are evil. and they have to be presented as evil. They want to murder people, men, women, children, Jews all over the world. If they're presented as, oh, they're just anti-Semitic, you could dismiss anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is a philosophy, it's a perspective, it's an approach. It can be dismissed. It can't be dismissed. It's evil, and it has to be called out. When people don't recognize it as evil, they think it's just a different perspective. Everyone here has heard of the famous author Roald Dahl, wrote Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Matilda, right? Prominent writer, complete and total anti-Semite. In an interview, he said, I can understand Hitler. He says, I don't agree with Hitler. I wouldn't do what Hitler does, but you could understand the problem that Hitler had with the Jews. If for 2,000 years, every nation has a problem with the Jews, it's probably because of something wrong with the Jewish people. He actually said that. He was quoted in a real article. That's not a legitimate political perspective. There are people who like Jews, there are people who hate Jews, some people are pro-Semitic, some people are anti-Semitic. No, anti-Semitic is evil, and it has to be called out that way. And only when being called out that way do we have any chance of moving forward at all. So the absurdity of anti-Semitism leads to the critical question. The critical question, of course, is why? Why have the Jewish people been singled out for this type of evil, absurd, contradictory hatred for over 2,000 years? There are many explanations. Right? Text number 8, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, gives us an overview. Marcus, would you like to read text number 8 on page
Just give me a second.
60? Okay.
Okay. There has been an almost endless set of speculations about what the cause of anti-Semitism actually is. Some have seen it in psychological terms: displaced fear, externalization of inner conflict, projected guilt, the creation of a scapegoat. Others have given it a socio-political explanation. Jews were a group who could conveniently be blamed for economic resentments, social unrest, class conflict, or destabilizing change. Yet others view it through the prism of culture and identity. Jews were the stereotyped outsiders against whom a group could define itself. Yet
Sorry? Yeah, continue.
Yet others noting the concentration of anti-Semitism among the very faiths. Christianity and Islam, they trace their descent to Abraham, and Judaism favor a Freudian explanation in terms of the myth of Oedipus, who seek to kill those who gave us birth. It would be strange indeed if so complex phenomenon did not give rise to multiple explanations.
So Rabbi Sachs traces through the various explanations for why Jews have been targeted: psychological explanations, socio-political explanations, cultural, as well as religious. Now, are any of these particular explanations, do they resonate with you? Perhaps one stronger than the other? I think
Don't you think that the greatest number of situations come from either religious convictions or from people who feel that somehow they're not getting their fair share, and they're going to blame it on the people that seem to be doing a little better, or at least the people that are different, which would be the socio-political situation?
Yeah, those are definitely two reasons for anti-Semitism, which present very strongly throughout history and definitely make a lot of sense. We can relate to it. We've seen it. We've seen it, and we're familiar with it. Now, I want to present another explanation, perhaps an explanation that goes a little bit deeper than these explanations, which gives us not only a cause for anti-Semitism, but actually includes within it perhaps a solution. But before I get to that explanation, I want to explore a solution that was attempted that has failed. What is a solution that has been attempted and failed? Everything that we have said so far in terms of causes of anti-Semitism they are all some type of problem with the Jews. The Jews are either have religious issues, socio-political issues, right? They're whatever issue you want to say, the anti-Semites have problems with the Jews. One potential reaction to that is, if anti-Semites have problem with the Jews' behavior, whether it's behavior A, B, or C, if the Jewish people, if we would change behavior A, B, or C, the anti-Semites won't have that problem anymore, right? We will be able to solve, we'll be able to eradicate, anti-Semitism won't be an issue. However, I think this is a incredibly incorrect approach. Number one, anti-Semites are like bullies. When a person is being bullied, do we blame the victim? Do we say, you need to change your behavior? You need to change the way you talk. You need to change your clothing, right? You need to change all these various things about you. God forbid, we would never say that, right? We do not blame the victim. If you have a woman is a victim of domestic abuse, right? We would not say, blame the victim. Maybe it's the wife's fault, the way she spoke, the way she acted, the way she talked. Absolutely, we would never do that. That never works, right? Blaming the victim is not acceptable. It doesn't work, and it is never going to solve the problem. We have to realize when it comes to anti-Semitism, anti-Semitism is not about us. We do not do anything wrong. Anti-Semitism is a statement about the hater. It's not a statement about those who are hated. Text number 11. Craig, would you like to read text number 11, page 64?
Jews must fight anti-Semitism, but never internalize it. That is easier said than done. If you are hated, it is natural to believe you're hateful, that the defect lies in you. It rarely does. Hate exists in the mind of the hater, not in the person of the hated. Jews have faults, and Judaism is a religion of self-criticism and repentance, but those faults have nothing to do with those of which they are accused by their enemies. Anti-Semitism tells us about anti-Semites, not Jews. One of the mistakes made by good, honorable, and reflective Jews was to believe that since Jews were hated because they were different, they should try as far as possible not to be different. So some converted, others assimilated, yet others reformulated Judaism to eliminate as far as possible all that made Jews and Judaism distinctive. When these things failed, as they did, not only in 19th century Germany and Austria, but also in 15th century Spain, some internalized this failure. Thus was born the tortured psychology known as Jewish self-hatred.
There are Jews who have felt that, if these people have all of these problems and issues with us, perhaps if we change some of these problems and issues, then we will be accepted, we'll be loved, there will be an end to anti-Semitism. And Jews have internalized the problems, the complaints, the criticisms, the hatred of anti-Semitism. Perhaps complete assimilation, maybe that will work. Perhaps if we renounce various public displays of Judaism, alter, change traditions, renounce various beliefs that we have, perhaps this will make us accepted. It has not worked for the past 2,000 years, and it's not going to work. Germany, just before the Holocaust, the intermarriage rate was over 50%. Jews were heavily assimilated into German society. Germans did not have an issue with the religion of the Jewish people. The entire Holocaust was framed in terms of race, right? The Jewish race. It did not matter if you were religious, if you're not religious. Not only that, it did not matter if you converted to Christianity. If you converted to Christianity, even second generation convert to Christianity, from the perspective of the Nazis, right? You were of the Jewish race. None of the elements of the religion were relevant. Assimilation, renouncing traditions, renouncing beliefs, it has not and did not help. So we have to remember, do not internalize the criticisms of the anti-Semites, right? we are not the problem. Hold on a second. There was a slide that I'm looking for. There we go. Okay. The explanations for anti-Semites must be turned outwards. We have to remember that hate exists in the mind of the hater, not the person of the hated, right? This is not our issue. It doesn't require us to change. The issue is in the head and the mind of the anti-Semites. They are the ones who are required to change, not us. Now, sometimes though, there are Jews who could be a little uncomfortable with PDAs of Jewishness, right? Public displays, maybe not of affection, public PDJs, public displays of Judaism, right? Just, maybe they think to themselves, we're sticking out a little bit, maybe it is our problem. You're all familiar with Jackie Mason and the jokes that he used to say, too Jewish, right? There are people who, they feel some things are a little bit too Jewish. In response to that, we have the fabulous story from Rabbi Dr. Abraham Twersky, Milwaukee native. You're probably familiar with the story. Text number 12. Phil, would you like to read text number 12?
Okay. Page 66. I was once traveling on a bus, dressed in my customary garb, wearing a broad black hat and a black frock coat. A man approached me and said, "I think it's shameful that your appearance is so different. There is no need for Jews in America to be so conspicuous with long beards and black hats." "I'm sorry, mister," I said to the man. "I'm not Jewish, I'm Amish, and this is how we dress." The man became apologetic. "Oh, I'm terribly sorry, sir." He said, "I did not mean to offend you. I think you should be proud of preserving your traditions."
This is such a classic story, and it demonstrates that the problem, the issue, is not with the wearer of a black hat or a wearer of a long black coat. The problem is in the mind, right, of the hater. That's the one who has the problem, not the wearer of the black coat. However, this does lead to an interesting question, right? Do we belong here? Do Jews in the year 2021 belong in the United States of America? And you could ask this question about Australia, about Argentina, about England, but again, we're Americans. Do we belong in this country? Now, forget about Israel. I'm not asking a religious question, should a Jew be living in Israel, right? The question, do Jews belong living in the United States of America? Is it appropriate? Is it legal? Is it correct that Jews should live in America? What is the answer? Absolutely. Of course, Jews have a right. This is a free country, freedom of religion, right? The Constitution, Declaration of Independence, Bill of Rights, all those things apply equally to every race, religion, creed. How much more so it applies to Jews? Because Jews absolutely do belong in the United States of America, a very powerful response to anti-Semitism, again, which is the issue is the mind of the anti-Semite, not with us, is not that we should remove our yarmulke, right, to feel more accepted, not to stick out in America. Exactly the opposite, right? We should put on our yarmulke to demonstrate something very powerful, which is that we do belong in this country. Absolutely, we do belong in this country. And I have to get back to the slide that just got out of order here. It's very powerful to have public displays of Judaism because number one, it confirms that we are as American, as George Washington, as Abraham Lincoln, as Bill Clinton, whoever you want to use, Babe Ruth, we are absolutely as American as anyone else, and we belong here just as anyone else does, and public displays of Judaism will affirm that.
Go away.
Let's go to text number 13. Mitchell, you ready for text number 13? Page 67. If you can unmute yourself, Mitchell, and go for it, we'd love that.
Now,
Yep, we hear you.
13. In the first 3 decades of my life, I never wore a mug and dove necklace. It always seemed redundant to me. Since the Pittsburgh attack, I have the Jewish Star attended regularly, especially in public venues and in situations where I'm conscious of being one of the only Jews in the room. Show of pride has become important to me. I want people to know that I'm unafraid. This is an example set by Mitchell Lechshiner during his middle school graduation this spring in Vernon Hills, Illinois. Lechshiner doesn't usually wear a kippah, but the POA shooting changed things for the 14-year-old. It was important to make a statement that we're still here, that no matter what happens, we'll still be here.
If nobody wears a yarmulke, how is anyone supposed to know that Jews are here, that Jews belong here, that Jews are part of the country? But when Jews go about society, function as Americans do, as proud citizens of this country, it's a powerful statement to people that absolutely we do belong here. And there are additional benefits to having public displays of Judaism. It benefits other minorities. When a minority, especially a minority that might experience some type of discrimination, sees how a Jew can walk proudly, even if they're dressed differently, yarmulke, Jewish star, whatever visible display is, that gives other minorities strength and courage to say, we also belong in this country, right? We also belong here. And this allows the Jewish people to continue, right, this historic role of demonstrating to the world, it is okay to be different. Not everyone has to look the same, act the same, dress the same, talk the same. It's okay to be different. The Jewish people are different. We have our own traditions. We have our own customs. And it's okay for you to be different as well. And that's one of the great things about America. It's okay to be different. So public displays of Jewishness are quite beneficial and important. Yes, Mitchell.
That almost is the same reason about what we sitzes. That's not something I did years ago, but one young boy got me to do it. But the fact that it's just, for somebody else, it's like wearing the Jewish star. But sitzes is more pronounced for those that know what it's about.
Absolutely. And it certainly will give strength to other people when they see that a Jew is willing to publicly display their own unique differences. So now I want to go back to what I had said earlier, that I want to present a deeper cause for anti-Semitism, which presents also a response and perhaps a solution to anti-Semitism as well. And in this deeper cause, we're going to actually demonstrate that perhaps public displays of Judaism can actually help reduce anti-Semitism. Where do we get this idea from? We get this idea from the story of Purim, from the scroll of Esther, from the Megillah, and some of the Talmudic commentary that surrounds it. So let's go to the story of Purim. We all know the story. Haman wants to destroy the Jewish people. He wants to wipe them out. He wants to get permission from King Ahasuerus that every man, woman, and child in one day, there's permission to wipe them out and kill them. The king does not need convincing. Haman wants to bribe the king. He offers him a tremendous amount of money for permission to be able to wipe out the Jews. What is the response of King Ahasuerus? The silver you can keep, and the people do with them as you please. He says, I don't need the money, you keep it. You can keep the money and you can wipe out the Jewish people. Right? Two major anti-Semites plotting together to wipe out the Jewish people. The Talmud, in an effort to explain what's going on here, gives us a parable. Text number 9. Lisa, would you like to read text number 9?
Text 9.
Yes, we are jumping around a little bit. I have my own perspective on the order and the flow of the class. I do that on
Okay.
occasion. All right, text number 9, page
Okay.
61.
We can use a parable to gain insight into the respective positions of Ahasuerus and Haman. They are similar to two individuals, one of whom has a tall mound in his field, whereas the other has a ditch in his field. The owner of the ditch mused to himself, I wish I could buy the tall mound to fill up my ditch. The owner of the mound said to himself, I wish I could purchase the right to dump the mound into an empty ditch. Not long afterward, the two met. The owner of the ditch said, sell me your mound. The owner of the mound said, take it for free. You'll do me a favor.
So the Talmud gives us this great parable. Right? The parable is Haman wants to destroy the Jewish people, right? The king does not need convincing. What can this be compared to? One person has a mound of dirt in the field, the other person has a ditch. Let's make a perfect shidduch, right? Your mound goes into the ditch, it's a deal. It's perfect. This is the parable that the Talmud uses to explain the conversation between Haman and Achashverosh. We have two questions. Question number one, what deeper insight is gained from this analogy? When you read the story in the Megillah, did you feel there was something missing, there was something lacking, there was incomprehensible, you needed some type of parable to help you explain it? Haman says, I hate Jews. Achashverosh, I want to pay you to kill the Jews. Achashverosh says, I also hate Jews. You don't have to pay me. Kill them. It's clear. There's nothing, you don't need a parable. So why does the Talmud offer this parable? It's like a person who has a mound, it's a person who has a ditch. The mound is going to fill the ditch. The second question was, wasn't Haman trying to annihilate and to destroy the Jewish people? What is the connection to a ditch and a mound? They don't seem to be in the same ballgame, right? The level of seriousness, the level of need when it comes to annihilation and destroying would seem to be a lot more severe than the need to fill a hole in your field. So let's explore. The Rebbe explains this passage of the Talmud and tells us that Haman and Achashverosh, represented by the ditch and the mound, represent two different dimensions of anti-Semitism. Two different causes, two different reasons. They represent two different motivations for anti-Semitism. Achashverosh, who is the one who has the mound of dirt, his type of anti-Semitism is motivated by the typical racism and xenophobia that you might see. The Jewish people are different. They stick out. Just as a mound, a pile of earth, of dirt in the middle of your field sticks out, it's different, right? It's an eyesore. It's uncomfortable. You want to get rid of it. That is Achashverosh motivated anti-Semitism. Corresponding to the mound of earth, this is more your standard run-of-the-mill. Jews are different. We don't need them. Let's get rid of them. Haman, on the other hand, represents a completely different form of anti-Semitism, represented by a ditch, which represents an inner void, an emptiness that exists within the heart, the soul of Haman. Now let's explore who Haman was. Haman was a success. By any measuring stick, Haman has achieved just about everything and anything that a person could desire. He had money, he had wealth, he had power, tremendous political power, he had a huge family. Anything that you could possibly want to achieve in life, Haman had it, he lived a good life. Yet, from his perspective, everything that he had in life was worthless, it was meaningless, he felt absolutely empty. Why? Because of the Jews. When was this triggered most profoundly? When he met a particular Jew named Mordechai. Text number 10. Mark, would you like to read text number 10?
Sure.
Thank you.
Haman told them about his magnificent wealth and his many sons, and how the king had promoted him and advanced him above the other officials and royal courtiers. What is more, said Haman, Queen Esther personally prepared a feast, and besides the king, she did not invite anyone but me. and tomorrow too I am invited by her along with the king. But all this means nothing to me each time I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the palace gate.
So Haman had everything in life, but what is his response? He says, well, this all means nothing to me. Each time I see Mordecai, the Jew, I see Mordecai, the Jew, sitting at the palace gates, I feel empty. Why does he feel empty? Why does he feel a void? Because he sees a person whose name is Mordecai, who's not just an individual. He's not just a person who refuses to bow down to him, but Mordecai is a Jew. What does it mean to be a Jew? To be a Jew means that you serve God. There's a higher purpose for your life. There's Torah, there's mitzvahs. You don't serve and bow down to Haman. You don't serve and bow down to Achashverosh. Your life is not about self-preservation. Your life is not about self-gratification. Your life is about fulfilling the purpose for which you were created, to make the world a better place. How does a Jew do it? Not just casually, but a Jew does it with self-sacrifice. When Mordecai did not bow down to Haman, he was worthy of the death penalty. Yet with self-sacrifice, that's how Mordecai carried out his life. This realization that there's a person whose name is Mordecai, who is selfless, whose entire life is given over to the Jewish people for a higher purpose, right, and for a greater meaning. Contrast that with his own life, which is purely about self-preservation and self-gratification. You start feeling like maybe your life is meaningless, maybe your life is pointless, maybe your life is empty. Haman looked at Mordecai, a person who lived with self-sacrifice, selflessness, and purpose, and he felt that his life in comparison was empty and was absolutely void. Therefore, what did he feel? Get rid of the Jews. Get rid of the Jews, there will be no more Jewish people, there will be no more feeling of emptiness. This perspective on anti-Semitism is actually very similar to something that Hitler wrote. Hitler wrote, the conscience is a Jewish invention, right? Why did he want to get rid of the Jewish people? Because the Jewish people are a testimony to the fact the world was created for a purpose. Everything has meaning. We're there to make the world a better place, and we need to be selfless in pursuit of this purpose. Haman stood for exactly the opposite. It made him feel guilty. It made him have a conscience, and it made him feel empty. So these are the two different types of anti-Semitism that the Talmud demonstrates for us are actually embedded in the story of the Megillah. The perfect analogy being the mound, the pile of dirt that Achashverosh has an issue with, and the void, the emptiness, the ditch, the hole in the field that Haman has an issue with. What's the response to this type of anti-Semitism? How does Esther respond to Achashverosh's claim that the Jewish people stick out like a sore thumb, like a pile of dirt in the middle of a beautiful field? Her response is, I need to show you and I need to demonstrate you how all of the differences that the Jewish people have from your way of life, from your culture, all that makes us unique is actually positive. It's actually beneficial. It's actually wonderful. She demonstrates to Achashverosh that which makes us different and unique, that mound which you see, is actually something incredibly beautiful. Let's go to text number 15. We're going to jump all the way to text number 15. It is on page 70. Alan, would you like to read text number 15?
Certainly.
You got to unmute yourself. You muted yourself. Now you need to unmute yourself. There we
Okay,
go. Yeah,
I'll start again.
excellent.
All that Esther had to do was to prove that the conclusion presented by Haman following his arguments against the Jews namely that it is not in the king's interest to let them remain, was false. She told the king, "It is true that this nation is, as Haman stated, a people scattered and separated among the nations. It is also true that their laws differ from all peoples. Nevertheless, despite this," she told King Ahasuerus, "you can see for yourself that Haman's conclusion that it is not in the king's interest to let them remain is not true. To the contrary, you can see that the uniqueness of the Jewish people is actually a positive quality." This response is succinctly captured in the words Esther spoke to Ahasuerus. "May my life be given me in my petition and my people in my request." To Haman's claim that letting the Jews live was against the king's interest, Esther responded, "You should realize that this is the nation from which I, Esther, emerged. It is my nation, the people that produced me, that raised and educated me, and I conduct myself in its ways. You know well that you selected me from all the finest ladies, who were themselves selected from the 127 countries of your empire. If so, you have in front of you evidence that the entire complaint is without basis." Ahasuerus agreed. He was familiar with Esther's superior qualities and exemplary behavior. When he learned from her that her conduct was reflective of the conduct of the Jewish people, my people, he was left with one question: who in their right mind would seek to destroy a people that produces individuals as good as Esther? It could only be an evil and dangerous person.
At the drop of a hat, Ahasuerus completely changes his perspective. 1 second, he's ready to murder every man, woman, and child of the Jewish people. The next second, he is disgusted and revolted by such an idea. Why? What happened? What changed? So Esther says she's Jewish. Ahasuerus could say, fabulous, you will keep alive. You I like, the rest of the Jewish people we're going to kill. But that's not what happened. Because what did Esther say to him? Esther said to him, "May my life be given me in my petition and my people in my request." My people is responsible for my superior quality. She said to him, "Why is it that you like me? What was so special about me that you chose me to be your wife out of all those other women who for a year were being wined and dined and exercised and clothed and perfumed to be ready for Ahasuerus? What is it that you like about me? Everything that you like about me is specifically because I'm Jewish. The way my parents raised me, the way I was taught in my Jewish education, the values that I have in life. Everything that you like about me is because I'm Jewish." When Ahasuerus recognized this, he says, "How could we wipe out a people that produces someone like you?" Different, absolutely. Because you're different, because you stick out, right? That is what makes you so wonderful, so beautiful, and so special, right? That is how Esther was able to respond to Ahasuerus. And what that means for us, the more that we live openly as Jewish people, as good people, that has the ability to reduce anti-Semitism. Because when a person has a reputation of being a good, wonderful, honest, trustworthy, ethical person, and that person is absolutely openly Jewish, but it's not that you're openly Jewish, you are linking and you are connecting your goodness to your Jewish identity, that has a powerful, powerful effect. I once saw a documentary about a Jew from Chicago who went back to Poland to visit the family who risked their life to save his father from the Nazis during the war. And he asked this lady, elder, tiny, hunchback woman in her 90s, "Why did you do it? Why did you risk your life to save my father?" And her response was, "He was the most honest, the most respectable, the most moral, the most ethical person in town. You made any business deal with him? You didn't need to shake on it. You didn't need to write anything down. there was a mensch of a mensch of a mensch, a person like that we had to save even to risk our life. When a person is a mensch, and it's clear and obvious that the reason that they're a mensch is because they are living up to and expressing Jewish ideas, people are going to connect the dot. Why are you so wonderful and fantastic? It's because of the Judaism that you live and that you wear and that you express in a public way. They're going to be impressed. There's a fabulous joke about anti-Semites. What's the difference between anti-Semites and Jews? Jews love a Jew loves the Jewish people, absolutely loves the Jewish people. My neighbor, Mr. Goldberg, I hate him. He's a crook, he's a thief, he's a criminal. All the Jews I love, but Mr. Goldberg I hate. And anti-Semite hates every single Jew, but his neighbor, Mr. Goldberg, him he loves. He's an exception, he's different, he's wonderful, he's very pleasant. The anti-Semite loves the individual Jew despite the fact that he's Jewish. That's not the goal. The goal is you need to get an anti-Semite to love the Jew. Why? Because the person is Jewish. When a person is able to link and to connect your goodness to your Jewish values, that has the ability to reduce anti-Semitism. And there's a fabulous text here. This next text is from Muhammad Dajani. Born in 1946 in Jerusalem, he was a committed anti-Semite all of his life, a senior Fatah operative. In 2014, right, this person, who was a professor in Quds University, he led a trip of Palestinians to Auschwitz. The first time anything like this ever happened, and he was very quickly fired as a result. They asked him why. What motivated you to do it? Text number 16, Phil, would you like to read text number 16 on page 72?
Sure. I started going with my father to Hadassah Ein Kerem Hospital for his chemotherapy. And to my shock, I started to observe that the doctors and the nurses treated him as a patient. The doctors were very friendly and the nurses were also. He would bring them fruit, flowers, and chocolate. And I noticed in the hospital that Palestinians are also receiving treatment. That actually awakened me to a great extent to the humanity in the other, and it also awakened my humanity. This was the starting point.
So Muhammad, who had been an anti-Semite, when he actually encountered Jews, and he saw that their goodness and their kindness was a result of the fact that they were Jews, right? It totally, completely, and changed his perspective. So
Did it
one
change
method. Yes, Karen?
Did it change his macro view or just his micro view on those in the hospital?
It changed it on the whole picture, which was why he brought his class to Auschwitz, right? He felt that we owe something to the entire Jewish people. And he was trying to do that by bringing his class to Auschwitz. So the type of anti-Semitism, which is that the Jewish people are different, because they're different, therefore we could blame every negative thing on them. The response to that is to actually say, right, that it's precisely the differences that we have, which the differences that we have highlight all the good and the positive about us. Public displays of goodness and kindness linked and connected to your Jewish identity, that has the ability to eliminate anti-Semitism as a result of the Jewish people being different. But what about the deeper form of anti-Semitism? That's the result of a ditch. That's the result of a person feeling empty inside, looking at how and the way that the Jewish people lived and have survived 2,000 years with self-sacrifice, that feeling of emptiness inside. How do we deal with that? So here there is a very deep idea that's buried in the ditch in the ditch complex, pun intended. What is that idea? The idea that a person can look at the Jewish people, feel empty, feel inadequate, that is actually a corruption of something that's very, very positive. How should a person feel? A person should feel that the world is created for a purpose. There is meaning and value to my life. I have to rise above any current restrictions and limitations that there are in my life to become a better person, a more sensitive person, a more moral person, a more ethical person, and make a huge contribution to the world. That is a healthy perspective. That is how a person is supposed to feel. A person should look at the Nobel Prizes and say 20% of all Nobel Prizes were won by Jewish people, when we're less than 2% of the population, right? And that's even in America, less than 2% of the population. That should inspire a person. The idea that a person should live a purposeful, kind, moral, selfless life, that is good. That's a positive thing. If a person feels that I'm not living a purposeful life, I'm not living a meaningful life, I'm not rising above my petty challenges, and I feel empty inside, I feel a void, there's a pit inside me because I am not living up to my potential, and I see how Jews seem to be living to a higher cause, you should feel empty. It's positive. The question is, how do you react to it? Anti-Semitism is essentially a corruption of something that is inherently positive. It's very positive. Because that's the case, it's actually something that is redeemable at its source. This is something that we could actually demonstrate and show and educate a person to live up to their potential. There are people who have been great admirers of the Jews. I don't have the quote here right now, but John Adams, second president, was he maybe the second president of the United States, John Adams?
Yes.
He said the Jewish people have done more to civilize the nations of the world than anyone else. Right? He was inspired. He was motivated. He could have gone either way, to hatred, anti-Semitism, or to love and affection. So anti-Semitism is actually a corruption of something very positive. Approached in the right way, absolutely could be redeemable at its source. Is a very important Jewish belief. Everything God created is good. We have to dig deep and figure out and to uncover how it's actually good. Evil doesn't exist on its own. It's a corruption of something positive. We have here in this PowerPoint an example of the power of nuclear energy, right? Without getting into some of the politics that surround nuclear energy today, it could be the most destructive evil force, right, with a nuclear bomb, or it could be the cleanest, the cheapest, and the most powerful source of energy with nuclear reactors today. Are there some more work to go? Certainly there is. But you see how everything ultimately is for the good. We have to uncover and we have to reveal how the evil is just the corruption of something which ultimately is positive. There's a beautiful story which captures this idea and how we can ultimately impact the world. The founder of the Chabad movement is Rabbi Shneir Zalman of Liadi. He's known as Alter Rebbe. 1798, he is arrested by the Russians. He's imprisoned in St. Petersburg. The warden, huge anti-Semite, also biblical scholar, wants to see who this famous rabbi is that they caught. He goes to his prison cell and he says, I have a question, always bothered me. Adam and Eve, they sin, they eat from the tree of knowledge. God says to Adam, where are you? He says, what kind of question is that? God knows everything. He knows where everyone is. Why does he ask Adam the question, where are you? So the Alter Rebbe responds, well, the primary biblical commentator Rashi says that God wanted to ease into the conversation with Adam. He didn't want to shock him. So he says, Adam, where are you, as a way of an introduction. The warden was not satisfied with this explanation. He wanted deeper. So the Alter Rebbe said, I'll tell you. The world was created for a purpose. God was calling out to Adam. God says to him, where are you? Where are you when it comes to fulfilling the purpose for which you were created? What have you been doing up until this time? I placed you in the Garden of Eden. I gave you one command. Don't eat from the tree of knowledge. God says to him, where are you? And the Alter Rebbe says to this warden, this is God's call to each and every one of us in our life. God asks me and God asks you, where are you in the purpose for which you were created? The warden was impressed. The warden was very impressed and became an asset, became an aid, and helped the Alter Rebbe in the time that he was in prison. And ultimately, through this, right, this is what the prophets envisioned and imagined is going to take place when Mashiach comes. There will come a time when the wolf will dwell with the lamb. The leopard will lie down with the young goats. What does this mean? Right? The anti-Semites of the world will appreciate, will respect, will love, will become inspired by the Jewish people. Right? The wolf is going to dwell with the lamb. Maybe we're not there yet, right? We're not exactly at that point in time yet. But when we recognize that the real cause, the truest, the deepest cause of anti-Semitism is actually a corruption of something so good and positive, the desire for meaning and purpose in life, that could motivate and inspire us, that could give us confidence to live proudly as Jews, to demonstrate to the world that the world does have purpose and meaning, and hopefully the result of that will be that we will be able to inspire the world. We'll be able to inspire people to live their life more towards a divine purpose.
Lesson 2. No apologies. 1. The absurd and contradictory claims of anti-Semites have persisted for millennia. Attempting to refute these conspiracy theories may keep some people away from anti-Semitism, but it has proven to be a futile endeavor against hardcore haters. 2. The term anti-Semitism sounds more like a theory and fails to convey that this phenomenon is actually evil wickedness. 3. Much has been said about the root cause of anti-Semitism. One approach sees it resulting from an inner void due to the lack of a true sense of purpose in life. The Jew represents a commitment to living for a higher purpose and dedication to the mission given to humanity by the world's creator. Anti-Semites wish to obliterate their inner emptiness that they are reminded of when encountering the Jew. 4. Hatred exists in the mind of the hater, not the hated. We must avoid internalizing anti-Semitism and imagining that changing elements of our Jewish heritage will solve anti-Semitism. 5. Jews and other minorities cannot be expected to be bifurcated people, severing themselves from their identities in the public sphere. For a minority to have rights in a given place means that it can have a public presence. Being open about our Jewish identity benefits Jews and other minorities. 6. For some potential haters, the best antidote against stumbling into anti-Semitic views is knowing Jews who are upright and of noble character, and noticing that this goodness is linked to their Jewish identity, upbringing, and way of life. To have this influence, we must be open about our Jewish identity. 7. A Jewish explanation for anti-Semitism must allow for the possibility of change, because the Jewish prophets insisted in God's name that anti-Semitism will eventually cease altogether. 8. We can reduce anti-Semitism by teaching the world to avoid an inner void, by embracing God's mission for all humanity.
So I finished the class a few minutes early because in addition to the opportunity for question and answers, there's a short film that I want to show you, very inspiring, very moving, that has to do with anti-Semitism and the way we react to it. But first, I just want to point out, continue learning online, myjli.com/antisemitism, more information related to the topic of today's lesson. I also want to point out that our next steak and scotch, part of Club Mensch at the Shul, all men are invited to steak and scotch night at the Shul, Monday, November 22nd, 6 p.m. Join us for a guys' night out of schmoozing, good food and meaningful discussion. The evening features a grilled ribeye, sausages, high-quality scotch, RSVP on the Shul's website. There is going to be a steak and salad for women later on in the year as well. I also want to point out that there's going to be a Yud-Tes Kislev Farbrengen featuring Rabbi Yossi Goldman. He is the life Rabbi Emeritus of the Sydenham Shul in Johannesburg, South Africa, South Africa's largest congregation and president of the South African Rabbinical Association. Fabulous speaker. This is going to be absolutely an inspiring and worthwhile evening to attend. Tuesday, November 23rd, 7 p.m. at the Pelt Center for Jewish Life. You could RSVP on the Chabad Wisconsin website, chabadwi.org. All right, now I want to show this video. Hold on just a second. All right, I'm going to share a different screen. It's about 11 minutes long, and it is absolutely worthwhile. I'm going to optimize this for a video clip. Okay.
מאז שהייתי ילד הרצתי שלוחים וחלמתי להיות שליח. ולכן כשהייתי בשידוכים עם אשתי אמרתי לה שאני מייעד את עצמי להיות שליח, והיא אמרה לי משפט אחד: אני מוכנה ללכת איתך לכל מקום לשליחס חוץ מרוסיה. והתחתנו והתחלנו לחפש מקום לשליחס. ההצעות שקיבלנו היה להיפגש עם הרב הראשי לרוסיה, הרב בר אלעזר.
Told them there's actually a big city, the capital of Siberia, Novosibirsk, and what do you think about it? So his first reaction was it's not for him, it's not for his wife, too far, too cold, too complicated, no community.
ואז הוא הציע לנו רעיון, הוא אמר, תקשיבו, אני מציע שתיסעו למקום, תהיו שמה, ואז תגידו את הלא.
The Rebbe always told people, Leisanyan, to look into it. So look into it. Who knows, maybe actually it's going to excite you.
הגענו לנובוסיבירסק, ורק כשהגענו לפה הבנו מה זה סיביר, היה כפור של 30 מינוס, ואז שאלתי איפה נמצא בית כנסת, שזה המקום הראשון שרציתי לראות. מה שאני רואה, בניין שהוא מת ליפול, מקום משכנם של כל ההומלסים של נובוסיבירסק, ושירותים בדלי בחוץ. זה כל היהדות של נובוסיבירסק, עיר שלישית בגודלה ברוסיה. הגיע פורים, חגגנו, הזמנו כמה יהודים שאפשר, ואז יומיים לפני שאני טס בחזרה, החלטתי להגיע לבית כנסת, להתפלל. אני פותח את דלתות בית הכנסת, חשכו עיניי. פוגרום בבית כנסת. סידורים על הרצפה, חומשים, והדבר שהכי כאב זה לראות ספר תורה זרוק על הרצפה. כמובן שהריאקציה שהייתה לי זה דמעות בעיניים.
Sure enough, I get a call. It was the middle of the night, and he was frantic. We always say that if there's going to be any anti-Semitism, we're going to be the first ones to make sure that this gets the attention from the government.
כי אחרת השלטונות המקומיים לא יעשו שום דבר, אם לא יהיה רעש תקשורתי.
Open up the shul and show it to them. That's it. That's all I asked them.
כעבור שעה הגעתי, בחוץ כבר מחכים כלי תקשורת. איך שהגעתי ישר הם התנפלו עליי, הכניסו אותי פנימה לתוך הבית כנסת עם הפוגרום, הצמידו לי מיקרופונים, מצלמות טלוויזיה, מסיבת עיתונאים מאולתרת. השאלה הראשונה ששאלו אותי, האם אני הרב של נובוסיבירסק?
כמה זמן אתה בנובוסיבירסק, ובגלל מה אתה בו?
הסיטואציה הייתה נראה לי סוג של חלום, לא הבנתי מה לי, בחור בן 24, במדינה זרה, ללא שפה, ואני בעצם מייצג פה את כל הקהילה היהודית, ברצוני או שלא ברצוני, ולתת איזשהו מענה לסיטואציה הקשה שבעצם כל הקהילה היהודית נמצאת בה. וחשבתי לעצמי באותו שנייה, אם אני לא הרב של נובוסיבירסק, אז מה בעצם אני עושה פה? ועניתי, כן, אני הרב של נובוסיבירסק.
אני לא נמצא פה הרבה זמן, אני נמצא פה תקופה קצרה, על מנת להיות רב
ליהודים פה בנובוסיביר, שלא היה כאן רב. והמטרה היא להיות רב בבית הכנסת, שיהודים יבואו ויתפללו וילמדו תורה כמו שצריך. ואז שאלו אותי, מה התוכניות שלכם? אמרתי להם, אצל יהודים יש את האמרה הידועה, כאשר יענו אותו, כן יפרוץ. לאנשים האחראיים בעירייה ובכל מקום, שבאמת יעשו כל מה שביכולתם, שלא יקרה עוד פעם כזה דבר, כי דבר כזה שקורה בעיר זה דבר מאוד מאוד קשה ומאוד מאוד גרוע. ובאמת האפשרות היחידה שאפשר לעשות את זה, שבאמת סוף כל סוף יהיה מקום שאפשר לבנות בית כנסת גדול, ושם יהיה ביטחון כמו שצריך, ולא כמו שהיה כאן.
He probably didn't even realize what he was saying. That was the story, that a new rabbi came to town just a week ago, and here's a pogrom. The day after Purim, Jewish holiday, pogrom, new rabbi. And of course the story went viral, was all over the news, and it was getting coverage from every possible newspaper.
התחילו להתקשר אליי מהארץ, כלי תקשורת, רדיו, עיתונאים, היה רעש תקשורתי אדיר.
And of course we called people in the government and we said, listen, this is what's going on, something has to change.
הגעתי לארץ, חברים, ידידים, משפחה, כולם מתקשרים אליי, מברכים אותי על השליחות, מקום השליחות החדשה. אני ואשתי לא יודעים איך לאכול את הדבר הזה, לא הודענו לאף אחד, כי מבחינתנו זה היה פשוט טיול בסיביר. ככה עברו שבועיים, 3, חודש, חודשיים, ואז ערב אחד אני מתיישב עם אשתי סביב השולחן, ואני אומר לה, ואנחנו מדברים ואומרים, תקשיבי, כל העולם כולו החליט ויודע שאנחנו השלוחים בנובוסיבירסק, חוץ מאיתנו.
He realized that the words that he said, I'm the rabbi here in the synagogue, I'm the rabbi here in the city, wasn't just, by chance. This was what the rabbi was telling him, that this is your shlichus. It's difficult, but that's what we're here for. If it would be easy, many other people would be doing it.
וככה החלטנו שאנחנו יוצאים לשליחות בנובוסיבירסק.
When I look back at our own life and our own shlichus, yes, there were days that wasn't easy. We had pogroms in Moscow, building burned down, firebombed, and people getting attacked. There was a time there was no food and no education for the children, actually no nothing. Maybe connection with this holiday, they wanted to ruin our holiday. We're going to celebrate anyways. And you think today, these anti-Semites who burned down the shul, they gave us the opportunity to build something much bigger.
מעולם, בחיים לא הייתי מגיע לנובוסיבירסק, חד משמעי. בדרך כלל, פוגרומים הבריחו את יהודים והשפילו יהודים. ובמקרה שלנו, הפוגרום הביא את היהדות והביא גאווה לעם היהודי.
He moved there because of these difficulties. Maybe sometimes these challenges is what wakes us up and says, you know what, if there are people that are fighting us, people that don't want us here, that shows how important it is for us to be here. Whether it's an anti-Semite or a difficult situation, it's actually a wake-up call to tell us how important is our work, how vital it is for us to be there, to stay there.
Und eine von den Simonen ist wissen, dass es ein Schlich ist, bis hat auf drauf auf Menüs wie Kuvi. Also die, was darf ihm helfen, stellen ihm Stellen. Und die, was darf ihm beiden sein, verkehrt, reden ihm ab davon. Is auch das Guff ist ein Koche, der jetzt Hore prüft sich auf allerlei Wegen, öfter wird können beim Peren, soll nicht mit keinem sein spezieller Schlich ist, was hat in Leben Maseh. Und bis sieht die Memes, wie das ist, das ist ein Schlich, es nicht Paul werden, für die, was reden im Ort. Und sehen, die Stadt soll werden eine koschere jüdische Stadt und der Besa Knesset soll werden eine koschere Schule. Und der Besa Mede soll dort lernen, Teire bei ihrer Schamayim, wo demot wird der Eberster kommen und wird sagen, a Sheikhin Ito. Afal Piva, das in der Zeit von Golus und zusammen mit Nebesten gehen der Chechit alle Brochis und Atzlochis, am wird gebencht bebonne Chayu Mezene und die alle Sachen seien in der Neven von Revicho ומכל מייסיב זיינן לימוד התורה וקיים מצווסהו מתוך הרחובו בשמחו וטוב לבו. לחיים.
תוך כמה חודשים הרגשנו כמה החום היהודי, האור שאנחנו מביאים לעיר, באמת מאיר את היהודים, את הנשמות שלהם. מאות יהודים התחילו להגיע לקהילה. התחלנו בפעילות ענפה, שבתות, תפילות. אותם אלו פורים שעשו את הפוגרום, אם הם היו יודעים מה התוצאה של הפוגרום שהם עשו אז, הם בטוח היו חושבים פעמיים.
You'll pay today $1 million to any of the shluchim that are in Siberia. And today we have, Baruch Hashem, many cities where there are shluchim. You'll pay them the world. They're not going to leave their community. They love it. The people love them. No question that if without the shliach, this would have never happened. So could you imagine a rabbi all of a sudden saying, you know, it's difficult, but my children are here. What, I'm going to leave? These are my brothers. These are my best friends. And that's what the shluchim really feel. They come to community, they become part of the community.
אחד השיאים של השליחות שלנו היה לפני שנתיים, כאשר חגגנו את החתונה של הבת שלנו פה בנובוסיבירסק, עם למעלה מ-500 מוזמנים. בזמן החופה, המחשבות שעברו לי בראש, זה אותם רגעים שהיינו בשדה תעופה עם הבת שלי, בת חצי שנה על הידיים, מגיעים הביתה, המעלית לא עובדת, וככה אני סוחב את הבת שלי עם המזוודות לקומה התשיעית. ולא חלמתי אז שהחתונה של הבת שלי כעבור 20 שנה, נחגוג אותה בנובוסיבירסק.
There's no such a word impossible in the Rebbe's dictionary. And the Rebbe taught us by example. The Rebbe gives us the keiches, the Rebbe gives us the broches, and the Rebbe is the one actually that once you have the bitochen that it's going to be good, it's going to be good. Once you believe that it's not me doing it, it's not because I'm so strong, so smart, so talented. No, it's not me. It's the Meshaleach, is the one that sent you, that gives you the keiches, opportunities, and the broches to succeed. And when you see the success time and again, you don't need to believe. You just see it, and it's actually a fact.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that video. I wanted to share that with all of you. Right. Any thoughts, questions, comments?
Good morning, good afternoon,
and
good
feedback.
evening
Hold
from
on a
wherever
second.
you are, in whichever time zone you are.
All right, the video, another video popped up. All right. Any questions, comments, thoughts on the video that you just saw? How anti-Semitism could actually inspire such unbelievable development and growth in the Jewish community in one of the most crazy places on earth, in Siberia? Or any of the ideas that we talked about in the class? Yes, Mark.
I'm not sure how to couch this. If anti-Semitism has been an integral part of our history through the arc of history, it's always been a piece of our story. Is it viewed as a God-designed feature of being Jewish? Is it intentional?
I would say so. I mean, everything that happens for a reason. You know, God created the world to run in such a way, and it is only natural for human beings to feel, to be moved by the experience of the Jewish people. The question is it going to move you for the positive and for the good, or is it going to turn you into an anti-Semite? Right? Are you going to see what the Jewish people are accomplishing and say, wow, they're so different, they're so unique, they have such beautiful and wonderful traditions? Or are you going to say, I can't handle these people who look different, who dress different, who take off a month every year in September and don't go to work? This is natural, right? It's natural that there's going to be a reaction to the Jewish people. However, it's ultimately up to the individual to decide if it's going to be for the positive and for the good. And I hope that we demonstrate in this class that by public displays of Judaism, that is a way to influence the anti-Semitic world. And my hope and my goal is that Judaism, that Jews will be such good people as a result of their Jewishness, that when a person says, I'm going to be doing a business deal with a Jew, their first reaction is fabulous. It's going to work out great for everyone. It'll be the most honest and ethical business deal ever. Why? Because if a person's Jew, that's how Jewish people are, right? A person who is publicly displaying and expressing Judaism and their goodness is connected to it, that's a very powerful way to deal with it. And secondly, by living a life full of purpose and meaning and demonstrating to other people that we can rise above the challenges and obstacles in life and succeed, because we must. This is what we're called to do, that also can inspire people. So how they react to it, that's up to them. That's up to them. But we do have something that we can do. Right? Public displays of Jewishness has that ability.
Also, is it, I mean, there was mention that anti-Semitism predates Christianity. Is there kind of, who was the first anti-Semite? Is there a father of anti-Semitism here?
Anti-Semitism goes all the way back to Abraham, right? Abraham, the first Jew. He was described as an Ivri, right? That's where we get the word Hebrew from. The word Ivri means a person who's on the other side, right? That means a person who's different. Abraham was described all the way back then. Hey, he's this person, he's different. He's from over there, right? He's a foreigner. He's got different traditions, practices, observances. That is what it means to be a Hebrew. Abraham, the first Jew, was the person who was counterculture. He was leading that counterculture revolutionary. That's where the word Hebrew comes from. Abraham, the first Jew, the original Ivri. Jews are different.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. And the recording will be posted on YouTube. You can share it with your friends if you like. And I look forward to seeing you all at next week's class. And I believe in next week's class, we're going to focus on Israel and the anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism that surrounds it, and perhaps what we could do about it. So have a fabulous evening. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.